Okay. Hello. Today we will go over the sections of the brainstem and the cervical spinal cord, and I'm going to point out some structures you should know, and also the DCML pathway, which is for fine touch, vibration, and proprioception, and then the ALS/SCT pathway, which is for pain and temperature. Okay. So this is the cervical spinal cord. These are called the dorsal columns. The ones in the center are specifically called fasciculus gracilis for legs, and the ones on the side are called fasciculus cuneatus for arms. Information. So what happens, let's start with the DCML pathway. If you touch something or something vibrates or you move your hand, the information starts in the dorsal root ganglion. That's the origin of the first neuron, and travels through these columns. Okay, then the same first neuron terminates in either nucleus gracilis or nucleus cuneatus. That is the end of the first neuron. The second neuron starts in the nucleus gracilis or nucleus cuneatus, depending on if the information is coming from your legs or your arms, and it continues. This is the motor decussation. You know that because of the heart. So now it's going to stay in those nuclei, nucleus gracilis or nucleus cuneatus. This is the sensory decussation. And since this is sensory information, the second neuron decussates or crosses in this level. It goes from the nucleus gracilis or cuneatus, decussates via the internal arcuate fibers, that are these little black things right here, into the medial lemniscus, which are these two pathways right here. So if I were to point anywhere on here, this information comes from these nuclei. The information from here comes from these nuclei, and that's because it crosses over. And there's topography to this. There's a little man whose arms are up here and legs are down here. So if you had information coming from nucleus gracilis, it's going to go down here to the bottom of the medial lemniscus. From the nucleus cuneatus arms, it's going to go up here, and vice versa. So at the level of the sensory decussation, this information crosses over. Now we're going to follow. This is still the second neuron that originated in the nucleus cuneatus and gracilis, and we're going to follow it in the medial lemniscus. So going up, we have level 10-12. It looks like a fat butterfly. And the second neuron is still in the medial lemniscus, which is right here in the center. It looks the same as it did on the sensory decussation. Moving up to level 8-9. This is a thin butterfly. The medial lemniscus is still right here in the center. And this is information for the DCML, still following the second neuron. Moving up a level, this is level 6-7. It's got the enclosed large fourth ventricle, and the DCML starts to tilt a little. But you still have the arms up here and the legs down here. It just tilts. It goes like this, tilts in a little bit. So we're still following the second neuron. At this point, you know that the origin is in the nucleus cuneatus and gracilis, and the origin is contra because it crossed over at the sensory decussation. Moving up a level, this is level 5. At level 5, the medial lemniscus is completely turned from here. It has turned like this, and so the two men on each side are high-fiving each other. The arms are up here, they're high-fiving, and the legs are back here. And we're still on the second neuron. Moving up a level to level 4. Level 4 looks like a frog. The medial lemniscus is right here. You see a boomerang shape, and it is the bottom part of the boomerang before the bend. And the little man is still trying to high-five each other. They're still high-fiving. Arms, legs. This is still the second neuron. We're following the second neuron. And finally, this is the level 3. Level 3, it's still a boomerang. The DCML is the bottom half of the boomerang that's sort of demarcated with this pen, and the little man's arms are still medial, the legs are lateral. So if I were to point here, the very medial part of it, the origin is nucleus cuneatus. The laterality of the origin to this point is contra, because it crossed over in the sensory decussation. And then the termination is right here in the VPL of the thalamus. And if you want to see it so it's not marked, it looks like this, VPL of the thalamus. So the second neuron terminates in the VPL of the thalamus. It started in nucleus cuneatus or gracilis, crossed over to become the medial lemniscus, traveled up the medial lemniscus, through all the levels that you saw, and terminated here in the VPL of the thalamus. From here, it's going to go through the posterior limb of the internal capsule, and it's going to terminate. This is the third neuron, starts at the VPL, terminates in the primary somatosensory cortex. This is also the post-central gyrus. This is the central sulcus right here. This is the post-central gyrus, also known as the primary somatosensory cortex. There is topography here. The arms are more medial, the legs are more lateral, just like we saw in the brainstem sections. So that is the DCML. That is for fine touch, proprioception, and vibration. Do you want me to do ALS on the same file?